Whatever.
The brain is an amazing organ. It is able to take in and process infinite amounts of information. Discovering new things is what keeps our lives interesting. But in order to not get overloaded, our brains need to organize this incoming information in some way so that we can make sense of it. One way the brain does this is by finding patterns. Patterns repeat in a predictable way. They allow us to find regularity and security. We recognize certain patterns of behavior in our family and friends that make us feel comfortable. The patterns of traffic lights and bus schedules allow us to move around efficiently. There are patterns in nature that allow scientists and mathematicians to figure out how the universe works, and philosophers to ponder what we consider beautiful. Artists of all sorts also understand this about our brains. When they create new images, objects, and experiences through their art, they know they need to balance the way our brain seeks new stimulation with the need for familiarity. Using patterns is one technique that artists exploit to help create this balance. In this video, we're going to look at 5 contemporary artists whose works makes use of patterns in a prominent way. The Aboriginal people of Australia have a long history of storytelling through their art. Their story of creation, the dream time, is often the subject. In order to protect their sacred stories from outsiders, Aboriginal artists began using dots and patterns to obscure the symbolic meaning in the paintings. Contemporary Aboriginal artists continue this visual tradition. Emily Kame Kngwarreye's early artistic training was in preparing designs for women's ceremonies in her community in the Northern Territory of Australia. Originally working in the media of batik, she switched to acrylic painting on canvas when she was nearly 80 years old. Her work gained quite a following in the 1990s, and she is perhaps the best-known Indigenous Australian artist. American artist Kahinde Wiley is best known for his portraits of African American people. He often places his contemporary subjects in poses or scenes recognizable from traditional Western painting. This is done in part to call attention to the lack of black faces in Western art history and to elevate and celebrate Black American culture. His figures often occupy elaborate patterned backgrounds. Kahinde was commissioned to make the official portrait of President Barack Obama and was the first black artist to paint an official presidential portrait. How do we make sense of a world where we are constantly bombarded with unfiltered information through the internet? How is this fracturing our sense of what is real and what is not? How is this changing us as human beings? These are the questions Chinese artist Liu Shiyuan asked in her art. While forcing the viewer to confront this onslaught of unrelated information, Shiyuan uses repetition and patterning as a scaffold for constructing her images. As a young girl, Japanese artist Yayoi Kusama suffered from hallucinations where she saw flashes of lights and fields of dots. As an artist, she began to use patterns of polka dots to create what she called her infinity fields. She not only uses these polka dot patterns in drawings and paintings, but also in large installation artwork she calls her infinity rooms. Now 91 years old, she still makes art every day. Yayoi is Japan's most loved and best-known artist. In the 1970s, a group of affiliated women artists in the United States began addressing the issues of the blossoming feminist movement. These artists reacted against what they saw as the macho posturing in the current artistic trends and the chauvinism between what was considered high and low art forms. Challenging this disparity, these women artists specifically used traditionally feminine techniques like quilting and sewing in their artworks. Miriam Shapiro, a Canadian artist, was one of the leaders in this feminist art movement. She called her new art form femages. Although these 5 artists all use patterns in a different way and for different purposes, it is clear that each one explores how the visual language of patterns help us make sense of our world.